And I'm going to start with this picture of colonialism in the globe around 1820. And you can see that almost all of Latin America is now in the hands of Europeans and has been for 3 centuries. If we fast forward to 1910, everything's different. Latin America is now free, independent nations, but Africa has been carved up by European countries. How did we end up with this, right? Why didn't this happen earlier, and then why does it happen so quickly? The answer is good for nothing. And that's the name of this mosquito, the Elaphus mosquito, Greek for good for nothing. And this entire history of European colonialization in malarial regions is captured in a cocktail.
Gin and tonics are a very popular drink in Spain, very popular classic cocktail in the United States, and by some accounts, people would say gin and tonics helped save the British Empire.
Today we learned about how to make tonic water. I thought it was very interesting how without it, many of the colonies that we know today wouldn't exist, especially Africa, because they needed a specific cure to cure malaria, and that was only found in tonic water.
Winston Churchill, just to back up for a moment, the gin and tonic saved more Englishmen's lives and minds than all the doctors in the empire.
Because the Europeans, who every summer fell ill to malaria, thought it was the airs that were carrying the disease, the vapors. Bad air caused malaria.
Among all of the European empires, the British Empire stretched straight across the globe. They had territories in the Caribbean, territories in Australia and New Zealand, Asia, in the Indian subcontinent most famously.
We see the prefect of the Chinchona region of Peru, who's meeting with some natives, and they're offering him bark, the Chinchona bark. And they know that this is a cure for shaking. A Jesuit friar brings the bark to Rome, Santo Spirito, and they're issuing the bark to the poor. In sort of an early example of public health, solve malaria with this bark. And it was a bark from Peru and other parts of Latin America that eventually is going to allow the Europeans to colonize Africa. This bark, the Chinchona bark. When we say tonic, what do we mean? What does that mean in English? A tonic.
A remedy.
It's a remedy, absolutely, okay? And the essence of tonic water is in fact the Chinchona bark, and I'm gonna pass them around. This is what it looks like before it's ground up.
So the Chinchona bark, when brewed, makes a tonic, and that tonic not only cures malaria, but it also prevents malaria. And it doesn't have much of a smell. It has quite a distinct taste. By the 1840s, the British in the Indian subcontinent, where they've colonized pretty thoroughly, between the British citizens and the British soldiers in the Indian subcontinent, they're consuming 700 tons of Chinchona bark a year in the form of powder. And so what they do with this daily dose of powder is that they're mixing it into some water to consume it. I'm giving you a taste of straight tonic. Now, this is going to be, like I said, extremely bitter. Very quickly, people began mixing the quinine powder not just with water, which made it easier to consume, but they also started mixing this with sugar to make it a little bit more palatable.
So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna add a cup of the pulverized Chinchona bark, and then we're going to add to it peels from lemon, limes, and oranges, allspice berries, citric acid, which thickens up because what we're making is a syrup, And since we're trying to get this as close as possible to a 19th or 18th century recipe for tonic water, we're going to use Muscovado simple syrup.
But at some point somebody figured out that adding a dose of gin and turning this into something that you took not in the morning, but took in the afternoon was a very nice way of continuing to protect yourself against malaria. This mixed with gin became kind of a home brew that people were making. It does smell like a little bit like medicine. It is medicine. People were mixing this at home, and they were mixing it with a variety of different gins. Gin, you may or may not know, is actually a Dutch product. Originally, the juniper flavored distilled product, and so there are a number of different gins out there right now. The gin that we're going to be using to mix this product with is a slightly sweeter gin than what we're used to today. Mr. Umbach was really insistent that we try the tonic mixed with the old style gin because this is much closer to what they would have been drinking in Imperial India. In 1858, a gentleman by the name of Erasmus Bond bottles tonic. It took just a couple years later for the Schweppes company to begin bottling tonic water and begin its distribution not only in the Indian subcontinent but throughout Europe, and really starts establishing tonic water as a cocktail mixer.
But it rarely contains high percentage of quinine, which is the active ingredient inside of the cinchona bark.
One thing I'm going to make sure you all taste is the difference between the Schweppes tonic, which has quinine listed but is the last ingredient, and this Q tonic, which is made with agave, which is why we're going to be sweetening our tonic with agave. And it has the natural bitters as well as quinine. We don't fear malaria in the same way anymore. So when we have tonic water, we're not drinking it because we're preventing the onset of malaria. We're also not eating limes because we're afraid we're going to get scurvy anymore. And we're not drinking gin because we're Brits on Bengal tiger hunts. So there's very, very little quinine in this. Professor Umbach teaches at John Jay, the School of Criminal Justice. He's an historian. And he was very interested in this little fact.
And you could always tell how much quinine is in tonic water because under a black light, that is infrared light, the quinine will glow. Ooh, okay. So all you need to do if you want to get good tonic water in the grocery store is take your CSI flashlight, right, and hold up all of the tonic water to you. Yeah, okay.
The last piece of this, which has much less to do with malaria, but nonetheless is an important piece of the gin and tonic story, is the lime. And if I say something about lime and colonialism and trade, does anything come to mind? You're a sailor on a long ship journey. You're eating hardtack, which is a cracker type thing. You probably have beer and a ration of rum every day. You probably have salt pork and salt cod. So you're only getting fruit and vegetables when you're coming into port. So for months on end, you're just out on the water with a boat full of guys drinking rum and eating hardtack and salt pork. You get scurvy, which is a vitamin C deficiency. The British at some point realized that limes could counteract scurvy, and that's one of the reasons why the British sailors were nicknamed limeys. In addition to their daily ration of rum, they also got a daily ration of lime. So, the traditional garnish for a gin and tonic is a lime. So in a glass, you are drinking a very fine episode of British history.